There comes a moment in life when you begin to notice a strange pattern. The people who enter your world often mirror something inside you that you have not yet learned to see. They feel familiar, not because they are good for you, but because they resonate with the parts of yourself you haven't understood. In this sense, relationships become less about shared experiences and more about unconscious recognition. The wrong people do not simply appear at random. They are drawn to the spaces within you that remain undefined. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is constantly trying to show us the truth of who we are through the people we meet. Not because the universe wants to punish us, but because the unconscious wants to be seen, acknowledged, integrated. When you do not know yourself, when you have not explored your own fears, desires, wounds, or shadows, you become a surface on which others can project whatever they wish. And those who are lost within themselves are drawn to surfaces that are smooth, silent, in other words, the less you know yourself, the easier it is for someone else to define you. You begin to notice that certain personalities gravitate toward you. People who take more than they give. People who drain rather than nourish. People who admire you not for your depth, but for the stability you offer while ignoring your own instability. They come because something in you is open, unguarded, and searching. And because you do not know what you are searching for, you follow whatever feels familiar, even when it leads you into repeating cycles. This familiarity is not a sign of connection. It is a sign of unexamined history. When you have not explored your inner world, your choices are guided by impulses you do not understand. You may feel drawn to intensity because calmness feels foreign. You may be attracted to chaos because your nervous system was shaped in chaos. You may choose emotionally distant people because distance is what you learn to call love. And without noticing, you recreate the emotional architecture of your childhood, your fears, your past patterns, simply because your psyche is trying to resolve what it never had the chance to complete. The wrong people are not attracted to you because you are flawed. They are attracted to the parts of you that are unfinished. An unfinished parts speak loudly. They seek completion. They seek healing. They seek recognition through the only language they know, repetition. Jung believed that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it directs your life, and you call it fate. When you do not know yourself, life seems to happen to you. People appear as if by accident. Patterns repeat as if predetermined. You feel captured by forces you cannot name. But in truth, it is not fate. It is the psyche searching for its own reflection in the outer world. The wrong people arrive to show you where you have abandoned yourself, where you have not learned to listen inward, where you are still blind to your own depths. They come to illuminate the parts of you that remain in shadow, not out of malice, but because the human psyche communicates through mirrors, through interactions that reveal what words cannot. And so, again and again, you meet the same lessons, wearing different faces. But the moment you begin to know yourself, to truly know yourself, something changes. You start recognizing impulses before you obey them. You start hearing the quiet tremors of intuition that used to be drowned by need or fear. You begin to understand the difference between attraction and resonance, between comfort and familiarity, between love and repetition. And for the first time, you begin to choose, consciously, gently, quietly, instead of being chosen by your unconscious patterns. As you continue to observe the patterns of your relationships, you begin to realize that the wrong people do not just enter your life. You invite them, not consciously, but through the unnoticed architecture of your inner world. The invitations are subtle, a tendency to tolerate what unsettles you, a silence in moments when your boundaries should speak, a desire to be chosen even at the cost of abandoning your truth. These behaviors do not arise from weakness. They arise from the forgotten parts of you that long for recognition. When you don't know yourself, you don't know how to protect yourself. Your boundaries become porous, not because you lack strength, but because you lack clarity. You cannot guard what you have not yet defined. So others enter, not as intruders, but as reflections of what is still unformed within you. They step into the unclaimed spaces of your identity, not because they belong there, but because you have not yet learned to occupy those spaces yourself. This is why certain relationships feel strangely consuming. They do not nourish your sense of self. They absorb Italiano. You find yourself adjusting, shrinking, bending, rearranging your inner world to maintain the connection. Not because the other person demands it, but because a part of you hopes that by becoming what they need, you will finally receive what you have been seeking. But what you are seeking is not in them. It is in the unseen depths of your own psyche. Jung wrote that relationships are containers, spaces where the unconscious becomes visible, and when you do not know your inner world, relationships become mirrors, reflecting the parts of you that require attention. You attract those who mirror your insecurities, your unhealed wounds, your hidden fears, not to punish you, but to guide you back to the places where your growth is waiting. People who take advantage of your kindness often reveal your difficulty in saying no. People who avoid emotional intimacy reveal your fear of being truly seen. People who bring chaos reveal the chaos you carry but have not confronted. People who remain distant reveal the distance you maintain from your own inner truth. These patterns are not coincidences. They are invitations to awaken. And yet, awakening rarely begins with clarity. It begins with discomfort. The quiet realization that something is repeating. That your heart is learning the same lessons in new forms. That your intuition is whispering truths you are finally ready to hear. You start to feel that the wrong people are not wrong by nature. They are wrong for the person you're becoming. The more you turn inward, the more you understand that the roots of these patterns lie not in the people you attract, but in the parts of yourself you have not yet met. When the inner world is undefined, you cling to the external world for definition. You look for others to tell you who you are, to give shape to your desires, to offer stability where you feel uncertain. But no one can complete the work of self-discovery for you. This is where the shift begins. The quiet, transformative change that happens when you start observing your inner reactions with gentleness instead of judgment. You begin noticing how certain people activate old wounds. You see how the familiar can masquerade as meaningful. You recognize when your heart is not choosing love, but reenacting memory. And in this awareness, something remarkable happens. The grip of old patterns loosens. You no longer chase intensity, mistaking it for connection. You no longer justify behavior that disrupts your inner peace. You no longer confuse longing with compatibility. You no longer let the past choose your future. This does not happen overnight. It unfolds slowly, like dawn spreading across a quiet horizon. But once it begins, the unconscious no longer controls the direction of your life. You start to see that the attraction to the wrong people was never a flaw. It was a compass, pointing toward the work you had not yet done. And now, for the first time, you have the awareness to follow that compass inward. The more you explore the relationship between your inner world and the people you attract, the more you begin to see a quiet truth. We do not meet others as they are. We meet them as we are. Our perceptions are shaped by our history, our expectations, our longings, and our unresolved conflicts. And so the wrong people do not enter your life because you deserve pain or because fate is unkind. They appear because something within you is still searching for something outside you. This is why emotional patterns feel repetitive. You find yourself drawn to individuals who echo old dynamics, who evoke familiar emotions, even if those emotions are heavy or confusing. A person who is emotionally distant may attract you not because they offer love, but because their distance mirrors a wound you learned early in life. Someone who is unpredictable may feel strangely alive because unpredictability was your first language. Those who are self-centered may pull you in because you have not yet learned to center yourself. The psyche seeks what it knows, not what it needs. And until you know yourself deeply, you mistake familiarity for connection. You confuse emotional activation with emotional truth. You believe that intensity must mean destiny, when in reality, intensity often signals the reawakening of something unresolved. Jung wrote that the unresolved parts of our inner world come to us first as fate, and only later, if we are willing to confront them, as insight. The wrong people help you see where you are still unfinished. They reveal your patterns. They highlight your blind spots. They awaken your inner conflicts. They press on wounds you have not healed. And while it may feel painful, this pain is not meaningless. It is direction. It is guidance. It is the psyche asking you to turn inward rather than outward. For when you finally look inward, you begin to understand why certain behaviors appeal to you and why others repel you. You begin to see how your emotional landscape has shaped your choices. You realize that you have been seeking wholeness in others because you have not yet found it within yourself. This realization is not a condemnation. It is an invitation. An invitation to begin the process of knowing yourself. And knowing yourself does not begin with grand declarations or sudden clarity. It begins with gentle noticing. It begins with sitting in quiet spaces where your thoughts unfold without resistance. It begins with asking questions you once avoided because the answers felt too heavy to hold. Who am I when I am not trying to be chosen? Who am I when I am not performing a role? Who am I beneath the patterns I repeat? Who am I without the people I once needed? These questions do not demand immediate answers. They soften you. They guide you. They create space for your true self to emerge. Not the persona you built to survive, but the deeper identity that longs to be seen. And as this inner clarity grows, you begin to understand why knowing yourself is the key to attracting the right people. When your inner world becomes grounded, your outer relationships change. When you understand your needs, you no longer tolerate those who neglect them. When you recognize your wounds, you no longer seek people who reopen them. When you honor your boundaries, you draw in those capable of respecting them. The wrong people lose their magnetic pull, not because they change, but because you do. Their chaos no longer feels like passion. Their inconsistency no longer feels intriguing. Their distance no longer feels like a challenge worth pursuing. Their attention no longer feels like proof of your worth. You begin to see clearly, without longing, without illusion, without the haze of unresolved emotions. And that clarity itself becomes a form of freedom. The freedom to choose not from unconscious patterns, but from conscious alignment. The freedom to create relationships rooted in depth rather than repetition. The freedom to step away from what once felt inevitable. Because now, for the first time, you are learning who you are. And as you learn who you are, you begin to attract not what you fear, not what you hope, not what you remember, but what resonates with the person you are becoming. As the inner landscape becomes clearer, something subtle begins to shift around you. The world does not change, but your relationship with it does. You find yourself less reactive, less easily drawn into emotional turbulence, less dependent on external validation. This shift is not dramatic. It is almost invisible from the outside. Yet internally, it feels like the quiet reorganization of your entire being. It is as though the center of gravity that once lived outside you in the opinions, behaviors, and approval of others has finally returned home. When you do not know yourself, you live from the periphery. You wait for others to define your worth. You search for reassurance in faces that cannot offer it. You let emotions be shaped by circumstances. You let relationships determine your identity. But as self-knowledge deepens, the center moves inward. You begin to understand that your worth does not fluctuate with another person's presence or absence. You see that emotional storms in others are not indicators of your value. You realize that connection is not something you earn by being agreeable, available, or endlessly giving. And in this recognition, your boundaries strengthen naturally, without force. Boundaries, in their deepest form, are not walls. They are clarity. Clarity about what nourishes you and what depletes you. Clarity about what aligns with your inner truth and what pulls you away from it. Clarity about what feels like growth and what feels like repetition. This clarity is what changes the people you attract. Those who thrived on your uncertainty, who relied on your self-doubt, who were drawn to the parts of you you had not examined. These individuals no longer find familiar entry points. The emotional doors you once left open by default now close with quiet, steady intention, not out of anger, but out of awareness. Awareness is a kind of light, and light reveals what was hidden. You begin to notice how some people were drawn not to your essence, but to the roles you played. The caretaker, the listener, the rescuer, the one who absorbs, the one who understands. These roles once gave you a sense of identity, but now you see that they also concealed your deeper self, the part of you that longed to be met, not used. When you know yourself, these roles lose their hold. You no longer allow relationships to form around what you provide, but around who you are. You no longer confuse emotional labor with love. You no longer offer explanations to justify your boundaries. You no longer chase what withdraws from you. Instead, you begin to choose with intention. Slowly, gently, patiently. And as you choose differently, the emotional atmosphere around you changes. Conversations deepen. Interactions feel calmer. The noise that once consumed your energy becomes less compelling. You learn to tolerate emptiness where you once tried to fill every silence. You learn to sit with uncertainty rather than rush toward old patterns. You learn that solitude is not a void, but a space where meaning grows. It is here, in this quiet space, that you begin to understand one of Jung's most profound insights, that the people you attract are reflections of your inner state, not in a moral sense, but in a psychological one. A person who lacks boundaries is drawn to those who cross them. A person who fears abandonment is drawn to those who offer inconsistency. A person who suppresses emotions is drawn to those who express them chaotically. A person who longs for recognition is drawn to those who withhold it. These patterns are not destiny, they are invitations to evolve. And as you evolve, the nature of the invitations changes. You begin to meet people who reflect, not your wounds, but your growing clarity. People who challenge you not through chaos, but through depth. People who are not threatened by your boundaries, but strengthened by your presence. People who respond to your truth rather than to your roles. But even as healthier connections appear, there remains an inner process that unfolds quietly beneath the surface. The integration of the parts of yourself you once disowned. For knowing yourself does not mean simply recognizing your strengths. It means embracing the forgotten, hidden, and vulnerable aspects of your psyche. The parts that shaped why the wrong people once felt so familiar. And this inner integration is where the real transformation begins. As your awareness expands inward, you begin to see that self-knowledge is not a single revelation, but a gradual unfolding. What once felt like a vague discomfort now reveals itself as a meaningful pattern. What once appeared as unlucky relationships now appears as psychological mirrors. You realize that the wrong people were not merely obstacles. They were the doorway to a deeper understanding of your own inner world. And this realization opens the space for something essential: the integration of the parts of yourself you once ignored. We often imagine self-knowledge as a process of discovering our strengths, our talents, our clarity. But just as important, and often far more transformative, is meeting the parts of ourselves we have kept hidden. Jung called this the shadow, not the dark or evil part of the psyche, but the part that remains unseen. It contains your fears, yes, but also your unexpressed truths, your suppressed needs, your forgotten desires. When these parts remain in shadow, they shape your relationships unconsciously. When you fear confrontation, you attract those who push your boundaries. When you fear abandonment, you attract those who are inconsistent. When you suppress anger, you attract those who provoke it. When you ignore your needs, you attract those who overlook them. It is not punishment, it is reflection. The psyche brings to you what you avoid within yourself, hoping that through the repetition, you will see what has long been asking for your attention. And when you finally turn inward with curiosity instead of fear, the shadow softens. It stops being an enemy and becomes a guide. You begin to see why certain situations triggered strong reactions in you, why certain personalities unsettled you, why certain patterns felt impossible to escape. These were not random. They were messages, signals from within, pointing to the fragments of yourself waiting to be acknowledged. As these fragments come into awareness, something profound happens. The emotional charge around old patterns decreases. You no longer feel magnetically pulled toward the same types of relationships. You no longer mistake intensity for intimacy. You no longer confuse chaos with passion or emotional distance with mystery. You start to recognize the difference between what calls to your wounds and what speaks to your wholeness. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the wrong people lose their place in your life. Not because you forced them out, but because the version of you who recognized them, who accepted them, who needed something from them, no longer exists in the same form. The more you integrate your inner world, the less you need the outer world to mirror your unhealed parts. You become less susceptible to emotional manipulation because you recognize your own sensitivities. You become less tolerant of disrespect because you recognize your inherent worth. You become less drawn to emotional unavailability because you recognize your own capacity for connection. You become less reactive because you understand the origin of your emotions. Self-knowledge gives you emotional sovereignty, the ability to interpret your own inner landscape rather than seeking meaning in others. And as this sovereignty grows, something quietly shifts. You begin to experience yourself differently. Your inner voice becomes clearer, your intuition sharper, your presence calmer. You stop abandoning yourself for the sake of belonging. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop reaching for relationships that pull you away from your own center. Instead, you begin to cultivate a deeper relationship with yourself. You learn to sit with your solitude without fear. You learn to listen to your emotions without judgment. You learn to honor your needs without apology. You learn to speak with clarity rather than with desperation. And from this inner steadiness arises something rare, the ability to choose relationships not from longing or repetition, but from alignment. This alignment becomes the quiet compass of your life. It directs you toward what resonates, not what repeats. It draws in those who recognize your depth rather than depend on your availability. It reveals a kind of love rooted not in fear, but in presence. But before you can step into this new way of being, there is one final realization. One that transforms not only the relationships you form, but the relationship you hold with yourself. A realization that completes the journey from unconscious patterns to conscious living. As the journey inward reaches its quiet conclusion, you begin to understand something profound. Something that does not arrive as a sudden revelation, but as a gentle settling, like dust slowly returning to the earth. You realize that knowing yourself is not a destination, but a relationship, one that continues to deepen with time, silence, and attention. And in this deepening, you see with clarity why the wrong people once entered your life, and why they no longer hold the same power over you. For most of your life, you searched outward for answers. For love that would heal you, for validation that would steady you, for connection that would anchor your sense of self. But now you see that these searches were reflections of a deeper longing to meet the parts of yourself that remained unacknowledged. The wrong people were not failures, but signposts pointing toward the inner work you had not yet done. They were chapters in a story whose purpose was not to break you, but to wake you. And now that you are awake, the story changes. You begin to experience a sense of quiet discernment. You no longer rush toward intensity. You pay attention to consistency. You no longer confuse quiet people with safe people, or confident people with wise people. You look beyond appearances and listen for resonance. You observe how you feel in someone's presence. Whether your inner world expands or constricts, whether your mind softens or tightens, whether your heart opens or guards itself. This sensitivity is not vulnerability. It is intelligence. It is the intelligence of someone who knows themselves well enough to recognize what aligns with their inner truth. You become aware of the energy you bring into the world. You speak with intention rather than with fear. You choose with clarity rather than with longing. You let go not out of bitterness, but out of understanding. And perhaps the most profound transformation of all, you stop searching for someone to fill the spaces within you, because you have learned how to inhabit those spaces yourself. This does not mean you close yourself off. On the contrary, you become more open, but in a grounded way. You connect from wholeness rather than from need. You love from presence rather than from fear. You give with awareness rather than with self-forgetting. And in this openness, new kinds of people begin to appear. People whose presence feels calm. People who speak with honesty rather than performance. People who listen, not to respond, but to understand. People who are not threatened by your depth, your boundaries, or your growth. People who do not require you to shrink or abandon yourself in order to stay. These people were always in the world, but now you are able to recognize them because you have become someone who resonates with them. This is the quiet reward of self-knowledge. The right people do not just arrive. They are drawn to the version of you who has finally come home to themselves. They enter not to complete you, but to accompany you. They walk beside you, not ahead or behind. They value your inner world because they have cultivated their own, and in their presence, you feel something rare. Not intensity, not urgency, not uncertainty, but peace. Peace is the true indicator of alignment. Peace is the sign that you are no longer repeating old patterns. Peace is the sound of a life lived from within rather than from reaction. Peace is the feeling of finally knowing yourself enough to choose wisely. And so you step forward into the world with a quieter heart, a clearer mind, and a deeper sense of your own presence. You no longer fear losing people who are never aligned with your path. You no longer cling to relationships that require you to abandon your truth. You no longer search for meaning outside yourself. You carry the meaning within you. And perhaps this is the greatest transformation of all. You attract differently because you have become different. The world meets you with the same depth you have discovered within yourself. And life, which once felt like a series of repeating patterns, now opens into possibility. You know yourself now, and because of that, you no longer attract the wrong people. You attract only what aligns with the person you are becoming.